It's been a month since we've actually shot a video. I really don't know if I can pull this off in front of a camera, talking for a long period of time or a considerable amount of time in front of a camera, but I'm gonna give this a shot anyways because the movie that we're gonna focus on today deserves its appreciation. Today we're going to be talking about the recent Tamil movie named Karnan, which released a month ago in the theaters all over the world, but because of the surge in cases and the second wave and all of that, it has been released in an OTT platform, Amazon, and it's been directed by Mari Selvaraj. I just watched it a few days back, and I had to take this hiatus for almost a month because of stupid exams that I had to give. But now that I've got rid of them, I'm gonna focus on this a bit more, and I'm gonna be committed to give you good content as I've promised. Right? So let's go. Usually, when I'm making a movie review video, the very first question that pops up in my mind, is the content. Is what sort of content am I going to give you guys? What am I going to convey? The stuff that I'm going to convey, and how much am I going to spoil it, and how much detailing goes into the movie, and it's the analyzing part. But after watching this movie, the very first question that popped up in my mind was whether to make a video at all, because I realized how privileged people like you and I are, because we live in these top tier cities like Mumbai, Bangalore, Chennai, or whatever that is, and we really are oblivious to caste oppression. A lot of social evils like that. And I love how Mari Selvaraj, this is just his second film, but he did not shy away from talking about casteism and the gruesome repercussions that one has to face because of it. And he did that even in his previous movie, the very first movie that he made, that was Pariyaram Perumal, a couple of years back. And it was a much smaller project, and it was a different story, but it still conveyed a similar message, and it had the impact. And I guess after watching that movie, the movie stuck with me. Pariyaram Perumal stuck with me, and I really didn't know, how to get out of that trance, because it haunted me, right? That's how good the movie was. But I personally thought that was Mari Selvaraj's dream project, right? Even though he was supported by so many people like P.A. Ranjit or many other directors like Ram or Vetri Maran, what I felt was it was his dream project, and so many people spend all their life, writing a particular script, work on the screenplay, work on the scenes, work on the cinematographical aspect. But once it's out there, it gets the appreciation, and they're done, and they struggle to get another project, get the momentum like the way the previous project did. But he just, I was taken aback. I was gobsmacked by the way this film was shot, and the amount of passion that, amount of work that went into this, and the amount of passion that this guy must have showered on the story. I was just awestruck. And like I said, this has to be one of the best Tamil movies that has been released in the past 2 years or so, both artistically and commercially, because it's been celebrated in all such, in every single manner a movie could be celebrated, because that's how good it was. Now, talking about the movie in particular, I really don't know where to start, so I'm just going to begin the detailing from the very first shot of the movie. And the very first shot is when the camera pans down on a road where a girl suffering from epilepsy, or fits as we know, is struggling and is struggling for her life, and there is literally no one to help her. and there are just a few vehicles passing by, in fact thousands of vehicles passing by, and nobody stops for her, and stuff like that actually happens in real life. And the way it was shot, and the way it was candidly and crudely shot and portrayed to us, that itself took me back. And the soundtrack, the BGM was just out of this world. Santhosh Narayan needs, I mean, he's just one of the most underrated music directors in our country, and he needs that appreciation. You know, considering the fact that he actually worked under one of the assistant music directors of A.R. Rahman, he is showing his musical aptitude right now. But I feel like he deserves way more recognition. But anyways, talking about the movie, right after the shot, it has you under its clutch, right? Once the shot ends, the beginning credits show up, and there's a song which is really powerful, and in fact I love that song. But as the movie moves forward, the first half is kind of slow, and people usually thought, people after watching the movie, they thought that they kind of dragged it up. But what I feel is, it was necessary for us to connect with the villagers, for us to see their lifestyles and the food they eat, the clothes they wear, the way they speak, the dialect of Tamil they speak, the slang they choose to use in the language, in the day-to-day language, their accent, and the way they appear, and the way they approach life in general. Because a lot of things were portrayed in that first half, the games they played, like kabaddi, and there was in fact a gambling sequence also. And I love how this movie is kind of connected to the epic Mahabharata, because the movie is named Karnan, and Dhanush's character Karnan is somehow based on the mythological character Karnan from Mahabharata. And I love how every other character from the movie is somehow related to the Mahabharata, characters of the epic Mahabharata, and how they have weaved the plot around this concept, and how they have linked it with caste oppression. That was just amazing. And it was that first half that actually mattered, because if not for the first half, we really wouldn't have connected with the characters, we really wouldn't have known where it's going to lead. And I really don't have any such apprehension after watching the first half, because that's how sensible it was, and not a bit of it was dragged. But yes, there were a few scenes and there were a few characters that I felt were unnecessary, but I did feel that the actors did a wonderful job, and there was really no need, there was really no what to say, there was really nothing, there was no speck of mistake that I could point out in general, because that's how the whole story played out otherwise. As a whole project, as a whole movie, was really amazing. So these minor details really didn't matter to me much. Although talking about minor details, I have to mention how the first half has so many minor, not just the first half for that matter, but it has so many minor details and minute intricacies that actually matter. Like I said, the girl who's struggling from epilepsy and ends up losing her life happens to be Dhanush, the protagonist's younger sister. And she turns into this deity that safeguards or protects the village from evil. And every time something significant happens in the village, or someone stands up for something and speaks up, or does something significant for the good of village, or a dramatic scene happens, the deity is around, the girl is around with that particular statuette or mask on, and those are the most powerful moments according to me. And when it comes to detailing, I love how Mari Selvaraj played with that Karupi dog in Pareram Perumal, and I love how he did not shy away from doing a similar thing in this particular movie, Karnan, but with a lot of other animals. Like, mainly there's a donkey that struggles to walk because it's uh, both of its feet is tied up tightly because the owner does not want it to run away afar, or the owner would find it difficult to find that particular donkey if it runs away afar or even walks off. And I love how that particular donkey is used as a symbolic aspect in the movie, a metaphorical aspect in the movie. And even the horse that Karnan rides on and the little guy takes care of has a huge symbolic effect and a dramatic and mythological effect, because Karnan rides on the horse and it gives a reference to Mari Selvaraj's previous movie, which is Pariyaram Perumal, which basically means Vishnu riding a horse. So that whole symbolic thing, for me as a movie, as a movie nerd, mattered a lot, and it was just beautifully done. I really haven't seen another Tamil director do a wonderful job in terms of cinematographical aspect, or in terms of just those particular shots that you have. I don't think anyone has paid that much attention apart from Mani Ratnam or such great directors, such great names. And for the considering the fact that this is Mari Selvaraj's second movie, and in the first one he had like really less influence, or we had very less influence in the industry, and considering the fact that he did not have the resources, and to pull off such a good movie in the very first in his very first attempt, and using that influence and that fame and that monetary strength that he gained after the first movie diligently and religiously into his second movie, and channelizing everything in a positive manner, every single penny going into the movie, that gave me happiness. We could see the way the movie was shot. Right, going back into detailing, I should say that there were so many other aspects, like how Karnan is known to be Lord Surya's or son's son's child, son's offspring, and every time there's a dramatic scene, there's camera panning out towards Karnan and there's sun at the backdrop, and he's more of a silhouette in the shot, and there are these headless deities whose statues usually worshipped, and because they're headless, it signifies that the village is considered to have no image of itself, or maybe have no the villages don't have meaning to their life. But every time they show the deity, you can see Karnan popping out of nowhere, out of the blue, and Karnan's head usually aligns with that particular deity, and those are beautiful shots, and it has a symbolic meaning towards it that says that he's the leader up front, and he's the one who's giving the village a meaning, and that was beautifully done according to me. And the butterfly, which flutters and struggles to fly in the police custody when a few of the elderly senior citizen men have been taken to the custody and are beaten up, in a gruesome way. You can actually see the butterfly struggling to fly, and it ends up falling down. So that was an amazing metaphor that was used. But in the very next shot, when Dhanush actually realizes that they're up there in the terrace, right under the sun, you can see the same butterfly or the moth flying freely, which says that they have been finally freed. And minor details like these actually mattered a lot to me. In fact, even before the intermission, the interval, when Dhanush goes and vandalizes the bus, the villages of that Kudiyankulam village vandalize the bus out of anger and rage, you can see that Dhanush frees off the donkey, which symbolizes that these men are free now. They're ready to take their own decisions and take control of the situation. And that was beautifully done. And at the end, when you can actually see that the donkey goes to one other donkey, which happens to be its mother, and you can see that there's a newborn, there's an infant that was just came out of who just came out of his mother's womb, the climax scene, and how they linked that particular aspect to show that the coming generation is free now, was again wonderfully done. And the names of the characters, like I said, were somehow linked to Mahabharata, like how the leader or the senior most person from the village his name happens to be Duryodhan, and you can see that Duryodhan and Karnan actually have a very good relationship, or a very strong bond in Mahabharata. And even in this, when people actually go or stand up against Karnan, and most of them actually despise him and the decisions that he takes, Duryodhan is the one who stands up for him. And there are a few other characters like Abhimanyu and whatnot, which pretty much says that there are so many references of Mahabharata. And even the main villain, the inspector, the head inspector, his name happens to be Kanaparan, which means Krishna, Lord Krishna. And you can see the reference now. And there's one character that really stuck with me, and that was Yaman, or his grandpa, that he usually denotes by calling him Tata. And it was played by Lal, a Malayali actor, who's a wonderful actor, and he did a wonderful job in this movie too. I loved how their chemistry played out throughout the movie, and I love how he had this huge significance, and not just physically, but also how he affected the movie emotionally. And there were so many scenes that played a tribute or homage to him, because there's this painting in the movie. If you actually watch the movie, it's a spoiler alert, but if you actually watch the movie, there's a painting that has been that the painter, the artist, is pretty much painting structure, and it's a headless structure because the artist has leaves off, because Yaman calls him off for a kabaddi match. But during the climax of the movie, they show that it happens to be Yaman himself, and it's a painting of a military officer. And every time Yaman is shown in his house, in a backdrop of household, you can actually see a few clothes hanging in the backdrop, and there is a military uniform every time in the backdrop, which says that he was a retired military officer, and that is the reason he forces Karnan to join the CRPF forces, and which Karnan he actually gets after his selection process. And talking about the selection process, Karnan actually goes to a neighboring village, and he joins his selection process, and he gets selected. He's in fact one of the last people to cross the boundary. And just as they show the victory, the camera pans out and shows the person who just couldn't cross and is struggling and is fighting with the military officers to just let him go. And it says how a person's victory cannot be achieved by another person's loss, by putting another person down. And that was a beautiful metaphorical attribute that was brought to this movie. And Karnan's love interest in this movie, her name is Draupadi. I felt like that one character could have been omitted from the movie because she really didn't have much to say. Because even if she was omitted from the movie, I really don't think it would have made a huge difference. But because of the commercial compulsions, the director must have put it. But it really didn't bother me, because she was really good with the character. And in fact, the beauty of this movie is nobody. Before I say that, I just want to mention that her name is Draupadi, and ironically, Karnan and Draupadi end up together in this rendition, but in Mahabharata they usually don't end up together. And most of the versions of Mahabharata, and I love how they played out these two characters in this particular rendition. So that's a beautiful thing. And an amazing aspect of this movie is that nobody actually used makeup, but a lot of characters, a lot of actors stayed under the sun for a long time just so they could, get a significant amount of tan on the skin, which is amazing. And it's a nice way of cutting out of cost, and it's a natural way. So I mean, I love how the director, you know, handled this aspect of the movie. And the very main thing or the aspect that I have to talk about from this movie would be the climax, which is pretty much like a small battle scene. And I love how this was shot, and I love how the director didn't really shy away from anything, and it was really candid and true and raw. And Karnan's entry was amazing. It is in fact he's leaving the war and walking off because he gets a job in the military, but he just goes back as he feels that there's something wrong happening in the village, and he rides the horse with the sword in his hand. And you can see that the sword plays a huge significance in the movie as he wields it. You know, especially the first time he wields the sword is when he kills the fish. He cuts the fish into two halves, which happens to be a tradition in the village, an ancient tradition in the village. And that was a beautiful shot actually, and it kind of signifies how Karnan went for this Swayamvar of Draupadi, and he couldn't really shoot the arrow because they denied him of that particular right, and they didn't want him to succeed. But in this, he ends up killing the fish, which shows how strong of a character Karnan is, how much importance the movie is giving to Karnan in this, right, in the story. And like I said, the climax was a very important scene, and it wasn't overly done. The rage and the violence was justified, but at the same time they show that he faces the repercussions as he's jailed, as he's imprisoned for 10 years after that. And you can see how he ends up killing the police officer because he just keeps on talking and he's not at all afraid. And you can see how much pain and agony it gives Dhanush's character at that moment. And Natty, the villain, the main villain, did a wonderful job. You know, him being a cinematographer, I've always felt that a person who works in the sets can end up being a very good actor because he sees what's happening, and Natty did a wonderful job according to me. So that kind of proves my point. And the sad part about this is this was actually based on a few real stories and real incidents that happened in the state of Tamil Nadu because of caste oppression. One was based on a true story on a village named Kudiyankulam, and this story pretty much resonates with what happened to that village. And I actually read it up on Google and other reliable sources, and I realized that this is so scary, and this happened in 1995. There was another incident that happened in 1999 and in the 90s, and the fact that the people who were atrocious involved in this are actually alive even today, and they're roaming freely, and the people who got affected lost their livelihoods. A lot of people lost their lives, even though they have recovered now, they're prosperous. It's a very sad thing, and it haunts them even today. And there were a few videos which actually showed people go to that particular village and talk to them about in this movie, and you could see it in their eyes how much this movie meant to them. According to me, this movie is definitely national award worthy, and many other film festivals. This should definitely go to many other film festivals, and this is a movie which can be sent to the Oscars by all means. And when I say this, I bloody mean it. And I personally want Dhanush to be nominated for the National Award. I'm really not a huge fan of him, but he's been proving me wrong again and again and again. And I really did not go with any sort of expectations for this movie, but it just outdid itself, and I was just blown away. And I love how this outdid Pariyaram Perumal also in a way. But it did feel like Pariyaram Perumal had like a personal effect on me. But this showed an aspect, and this showed a struggle of a whole village. So it was kind of diluted comparatively. But nonetheless, it was a beautiful movie. And according to me, I would give it a solid 9.2 out of 10. But I didn't do that, so it'll be 9 out of 10. And I definitely do think that you should go and watch this movie. So like, share and subscribe, and share this video as much as you can if you've liked it, and comment your opinions, and please do give us any other movie to watch and give us any suggestions for what to do in the upcoming videos. And I will definitely be more consistent with our videos, and our content would be a bit more smooth, and I promise we'll work on it. And thank you, and have a wonderful bye.